ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਮੈਂ ਬੜਾ ਕੁਝ ਵੇਖ ਗਿਆ I've seen a lot. Those were amongst my mother's final words last week. And she did see a lot in 84 years. And I'm going to share some of what she saw with you today. I make no apology, I'm going to speak in English because many of my age and older will know her story, but many grandchildren, great-grandchildren will not. So please listen. Born in Padewala, Punjab, India, one of 8 children in 1939. Same year World War II started, but World War II didn't affect that area of Punjab. In fact, they were oblivious to it. However, just a few years later, in 1947, something serious happened that affected Punjab. In fact, it affected India. It was the annexation of India, the partition, that the final act of the British Empire in splitting India into India and Pakistan. And that actually affected an 8-year-old child, that was my mother. She witnessed firsthand the bloodshed of the mass migration as Hindus and Sikhs moved from Punjab, which was now part of it, Padewala was now in Pakistan, over to India, and Muslims moved the other direction. There was carnage, there was bloodshed. Thankfully, her family and she survived, and they got to Amritsar, our holiest city for the Sikhs. Harmandir Sahib, our golden temple, is there. 5 years the family stayed in Amritsar. But in 1952, aged just 13, the family moved to the UK and arrived actually in Wisbech, not far from Peterborough, in the Fens. Strange place to arrive, but they did. And that's where they moved to. And some of the photos you'll see on there, there's one of my mum at school, at the Queen's School. It no longer exists in Wisbech, but that's where mum actually improved her English and learned. The family then moved to Nottingham, and that's really where they stayed for a good many years. In 1958, at the age of 19, my mum married Sardar Gudyal Singh Rathod, and, funny enough, moved back to the Fens, to March, an even smaller place just outside Peterborough. And it was here in March that my 2 oldest brothers, Ranjit Singh and Sarabjit Singh, were both born. Peterborough was the nearest big city to March and presented the best opportunity, which is why my father actually had a market stall in the city market outside the cathedral. And whilst he was doing that, my mother had one eye on property. She realised that this city is growing and property was a great investment. So between them, they bought property. She would often go and renovate and decorate houses while Dad was on the market, and they would then rent them out to the workforce that were building Peterborough. The family moved to Cromwell Road after buying houses in Bright Street, St Mark Street, and in Cromwell Road. And it was in Cromwell Road that I was born, and that same road is where my sister Shanti, my brother Paramjit, and my brother Kavaljit were born. So effectively we were all Peterboreans born and bred. Not averse to risk, Mum decided, along with Dad, that in 1964 to open a shop. And they opened Rathore Continental Store, and we sold everything. If ever you watched Open All Hours, it was like one of those shops. We had everything in there. It was food and groceries, clothing. Damn it, we had a tin bath in there, because people in those days used to actually use tin baths and stuff. So we had everything. The only people that didn't like the idea of new competition, of the first Asians opening a shop in Peterborough, were some of the other shopkeepers. So they put the rumour around that the Asians were unhygienic. The colour would come off our hands onto the fresh food, and if you ate the food, you'd die. So guess what? No customers came to the shop. The shop was empty, full of stock, devoid of customers. But Mum wasn't going to give up. She's a fighter. She's a smart lady. And so what she did was she employed a lady called Margaret, English lady. In fact, she's on the photo standing with Mum outside the shop in around 1964. And seeing a white face at the door attracted other English people in. And then they got to know my mum. Some of them even got to wonder what the great smell coming from the kitchen was. And before long, Mum was taking orders for Indian food. There was no Indian restaurants back then. I remember coming home from school one day and actually seeing 4 English ladies in the kitchen, wondering what the hell was going on. Mum was running a cookery class. She was teaching them how to make curries. Yeah, that's how innovative she was. And the trade-off was, when they wanted the ingredients, the only shop they could buy the ingredients, all the masala and the spices, was our shop. So she was ahead of her time. In fact, in the 1960s, she broke glass ceilings before that term glass ceilings was invented. Not many ladies, women, drove cars. Yeah, it was a male domain. You to drive a car. She passed her test first time round, drove a car. It's an Asian lady driving a car. And fond memories of her driving a Vauxhall Red, our red Vauxhall Viva, all over the place and with us in it. But as well as helping establish businesses and family, she helped other members of family move from outside the UK to the UK and to Peterborough. My cousin, Gurdev Singh, a couple of days ago, actually saw me at the Gurdwara and said, "Veer, brother, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here today." How right he was. And I applaud him for saying that, because sadly there are too many people that nowadays don't acknowledge the contribution that Mum and Dad made to actually help them establish themselves here in Peterborough. Yeah? Maybe a touch of arrogance slips in there occasionally and that's it. But there, I calculate it's about 100 plus people in Peterborough and around the UK that directly came here because of my mum and dad. So they kind of helped. But they also helped beyond their own community. They've had a strong affiliation with other communities that were coming in, the Pakistani community. Yeah? My mum actually started, I remember coming home from school, again, 20 pairs of sandals outside. I wondered what the hell they were doing. Were they selling sandals now? But there were 20 ladies sitting in our lounge because Mum had started a thing called a committee, which is a community chest. It was an idea of saving money. You put your tenner in, whatever, somebody took the pot that day, and then this carried on. It allowed people to accrue a lump sum of money. It allowed people to go and do things like buy a house, move out of rented accommodation, to pay for cars, to pay for other things. They called her Sawni Singhni. That was her name, Sawni Singhni. And that's it. That was what the Pakistani ladies and Muslim community know as Sawni Singhni. And that's it, because she helped so many of them. And I'm delighted that today I see some representatives here from that community, and I've had quite a lot of people contacting me saying we're sad at the passing of your mother, Sawni Singhni. Perfect partnership. It was a perfect partnership. Our father, mother, businesses, as well as the shop in Cromwell Road. There was then the Super Bazaar and the Wine King, Fulham Street. There was the market that my dad started, and of course all the rented accommodation. But you know what? Mum said her biggest prize was us, her children. That, she said, was the biggest prize. And, did she spoil us? Oh, God, yes, she spoilt us. We were really fortunate to be spoilt by this mother, and we succeeded because of her. So we had the best that money could buy, courtesy of Mum, and we had the one thing that money can't buy, which is love. And her love was big and immense. It's the thing I think I'm going to miss the most. So Mum and Dad, they planted this tree. It bore fruit, 6 children, 27 grandchildren, 51 great-grandchildren. That is a legacy. That is something that will ring through eternity. Thank you to you, Mum and Dad. In just finishing up, I want to talk about the most sacred thing ever, a mother's love. A mother's love for a child is the most unique bond. It's precious. Your big houses will crumble. Your fancy cars will rust. The gold that you hoard will tarnish. But your mother's love will never, ever wane. Whether she's here or not, it'll be in here, in your heart. I remember watching a film once with Mum. It was one of those biblical epic things. And this is a story about, it shows you, mother's love isn't recent. It's in history. It's ingrained. Soldier brings 2 ladies screaming and shouting into the king's chamber. And it was King Solomon. And the king says, why are these women fighting? And he pulls out this child, a very new young baby. He goes, this baby, this first woman says it's her baby. This second woman says it's her baby. I don't know what to do, Your Majesty. And the king thinks for a minute. And he says, this your child? She said, yes, the first one. The second one says, it's mine. He thinks for a minute. He puts a child on the floor. He said, well, if that's yours and that's yours, you know what? Pulls his sword out and he goes, what I'll do is I'll chop it in half. You can have half and you can have half. And as he raises his sword, the first woman screams, give it to her. Give it to her. The other woman doesn't move a muscle. The king picks the baby up and he gives it to the woman, the first woman, who said, give it to her. The soldier says, but, Your Majesty, why are you giving her the baby when she said, give it to her? He said, she's the mother. A mother would rather give her child away than see it hurt. The other woman didn't shed a tear. That is a mother's love. And that pain that a mother goes through to bring us into this world is ingrained in us, which is why when we hurt, we say those words, Hai Meri Ma, oh my mother. I've to this day never heard anyone say, Hai Mera Pyo. We love our fathers, but we don't remember because maybe that pain is ingrained in us. And so, yes, Hai Meri Ma is the way I feel today, my pain. So I know I'm going to miss my mother. I know I'm going to be in pain. And to paraphrase probably one of the greatest songs of the 20th century, when I find myself in times of trouble, my mother will come to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And that's what I will take comfort in that with my mother. And my final message to everyone is, if anyone sitting out there has their mother with them, you're so blessed. You're so lucky. Yeah? And that's not just here, but that's on the internet around the world, because this is being live streamed to several countries right now. Do this one thing today, tomorrow, the day after. Yeah? Because I can't do it. I can no longer touch my mother's feet. I can no longer kiss her forehead. And I can no longer say, Mum, I love you. Do that one thing with your mother, because one day, sadly, you will be standing here and you will not be able to say that. And with that, all I would say, Mum, until we meet again, love you, Mum, and Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.